afternoon, LEC community. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's edition of Ask an Educator. My name is Susana Elizarras, and my hair is very pink. I welcome you to another edition of Ask an Educator. If you're new here, the Latinx Education Collaborative is working to increase Latino representation in K through 12 classrooms. And of course, that work cannot be done without supporting, appreciating, affirming, and showing love to Latino educators who are already doing the work, AKA retention, right? But we like to, spice it up. It's really about loving and affirming and appreciating our teachers, all of our teachers, and especially our Latinx educators. I have the amazing privilege of having the 2023 Missouri Teacher of the Year, Christina Andrade Melly, with me today. Christina, how are you?
Hey, Susanna, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me with you today and with everybody out there on the internet.
Of course. I mean, first and foremost, let's spend some time there. Congratulations. It's 2023, right? You're the 2023 Missouri Teacher of the Year. Congratulations, congratulations. How do you feel? What does this mean to you?
It's really just such a chance to be seen. The year that I became my district's Teacher of the Year was coming right out of the pandemic. Teachers from all backgrounds really pulled together, and we found a way to make it work without all the answers, without all the resources, with the world sort of falling down around our ears. So being recognized just for my school for that work and then by the state of Missouri, coming out of it, maybe starting to get to some places that feel more normal. It's been really affirming. It's felt really good.
I love it. I love it. Well, I jumped right in because I'm so excited that we have. I think I remember you saying you're the first Latina Missouri Teacher of the Year. Is that right?
I believe so. That's me.
I think so too, right? So everyone, I mean, like this is what this work. I guess it's not what it's about, but like it's like highlights the work that our people are out here doing. So let me backtrack. I'm just so excited.
We got to
Um,
go into it. It's all right.
yeah, gotta get right into it. So Christina, if you don't mind, tell us about yourself, where you're from, who your people are, and what you do.
Oh my gosh, my people is everybody, like especially this time of the year.
Love it.
so, so I am a teacher. I teach sophomore and senior English at Rittner High School in St. Louis, Missouri. And the neat thing about that is I'm also a graduate of that same district. So, like, if you want to kick it way back to like who my people are, like where I come from, I'm the granddaughter of a coal miner and a steel mill worker. So, on my mother's side, my mother's American. Her parents traveled around a lot, worked really hard labor to make sure they gave their daughters opportunities to go to college. My father is from Jalisco, Mexico, from the small village in the mountains outside of Guadalajara. And his family came to the United States when he was very young, through Los Angeles, through Chicago. And then my grandfather was a steel mill worker to help his children get opportunities. So from both sides of my family, I come from a lot of hard work and a lot of challenges to kind of get to where the family is now. And I'm first generation American in that way. I came back to the place I graduated from to teach. I've been teaching there this is my 13th year. So I've hit that mark where I'm like, I've been the student for kindergarten to 12th grade. And at the end of this year, I'll have been teaching as long as I was in the classrooms on the other side.
Wow.
Um,
I love that. I love that. And I mean, I hate this statistic, right? But also 13 years as a teacher is quite a feat as well, right? The average teacher leaves the classroom after 5 years, and so to be committed to classroom teaching for this long is awesome, and I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's I know the educators who are listening out there, I know that third year, I feel like year 3 and 4 and 5 are so difficult because there's that sense of this job should be easier. Why isn't it easier? I don't have, it's my first year as an excuse, my second year as an excuse. And in my third year, I almost left the profession. But I was really fortunate that I had mentors and supporters around me, that encouraged me to stay, who said, change some things if you need to, and realize that you can change things. But were able to get me through that place where I could stay in the classroom.
I love that. I think a resounding message that often comes up in Ask an Educator is having a support system, having
Mhm.
at least a mentor or some or an admin, right? Or even, you know, a partner teacher who's the person that just like pushes you up in those moments, you know.
Mhm.
That's really interesting that after the third year you thought about leaving. I mean,
Mhm.
I'd love to dive into that a little bit, if you don't
Absolutely.
mind.
Sure.
So what was that like? I mean, what was that? What was the feeling like to
Mhm.
want to leave, and what kept you?
Mhm. I think anybody who's been through 3 years of teaching can kind of understand that you sort of have this perfect storm. At least this is what happened for me. That I was teaching freshmen primarily at that time. It was the kind of year and the kind of mix of student personalities and things happening in the outside world that some groups and I just weren't able to find this way to click. And they had a lot of challenges going on outside of their own homes and outside of the classroom that, of course, impacted what was happening in our room. And I just kept asking myself, am I making a difference? Am I doing this right? Are the systems that are around us? I feel like I'm doing everything right, but nothing's happening. Um, and so I had a lot of conversations late at night on the phone with my mentor. Rena Hirsch is her name, that I'll make sure I speak it out. That she just gave me space and let me process and figured out questions to ask, just to be genuinely curious about, what have you tried, what things can we try, what are other people you can pull in to work on this. And at the end of that year, I had come to this place where I said, okay, I found some things on my own that I can do that work well. I pulled in my support, some administrators that watched my class and said, yeah, you've got a lot going on here, which was very affirming and helped me find it. But I was also very angry at the end of that year, that I said the system should be set up better than this. These issues that students are seeing in ninth grade, these have been going on, I found out, through eighth, seventh, sixth, fifth, fourth, third grade. There's no way that we should get to this point and it's still there. So I took, I think, that frustration and that anger, once I was in a place where I could deal with it in a healthy way. I said, well, I'm either going to leave the profession or I'm going to start fixing some things. And I use that to get involved with, I think, some of the bigger work. I'm very active in the Missouri NEA, the union. And I think that third year of seeing ways that the systems weren't serving our kids, that really pushed me to a choice. And I said, I'm going to get involved to fix this for our kids. And that's what's going to help me to stay.
I love that. I mean, there's almost layers to what you described, right? So like that mentorship and the partnership and the friendship, right?
Hmm.
But then like you can take it a step further to say, you know what, I'm seeing a pattern, or I'm
Hmm.
seeing systematic struggles that are impacting my kids day
Hmm.
to day,
Hmm.
that I can perhaps go and be a part of the solution, right? I don't, I think there are some of us who are in those earlier years of teaching that maybe don't have the capacity to do that, but like those of us who perhaps do, right,
Hmm.
to to do it, right, and
Hmm.
to and it feels, I mean, I imagine that there was confusion, right, and like you had to learn what the NEA even was, and like what they
Hmm.
do and how they can support you.
Oh, yeah.
um Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think,
Hmm.
I mean, speaking from personal experience, I never knew a lot about the union, and it just has its stigmas and stereotypes,
Hmm.
right? And so tell us more about how that supported you.
Right. Like you come in and you're like, okay, I know that I have to sign up for insurance. And then a lot of people think, okay, that's all I gotta do.
Yeah.
Um, I think it really starts small. Like when I said, okay, I'm mad, I'm gonna go get involved. And I think I went to a meeting maybe the fall of my next year, and they said, great, now you are invited to all of the meetings. And I just started learning. I started having conversations with the teachers I met there. Um, but that change and that kind of that impact, I think, can start on the classroom level. Rodney Robinson, who's the 2020 Teacher of the Year, has this fantastic piece of knowledge that he says the most revolutionary thing you can do is teach our children well. And I love that because that tells you you can just start with your sphere of influence with your students, with your classroom, whether it's the text that you're reading with them, whether it's the classroom structures you have with them. You just start there, and then as you see what works, that sort of sphere of influence starts to expand. The teachers next door say, "Hey, what's that's happening? Like, this is really neat." And then somebody down the hall, and you can just sort of grow it gradually. And that's a
Hmm.
lot of what happened with me.
I mean, again, I hear like those like layer one, like your openness to learning, your open
Hmm.
mindedness to learning, right? But then also like seeking the resources that are available and taking, I don't know, almost feels like, I don't know if it's a risk or like a courage, right,
Hmm.
to learn from other people.
Hmm.
And I mean, the third year, I know, so the average teacher leaves after 5. Latino teachers leave statistically sooner. There's, I still can't find the article, but between 3 and 5 years, Latino teachers leave,
Hmm.
and it breaks my heart because I know that third year you're just scratching the surface of like,
Hmm.
all right, I can get my kiddos in a line, or like I got classroom management down, or I got curriculum down.
Hmm.
Now I can get the other one, right? And so like
Right.
for the nature of teaching to be so difficult, right?
Hmm.
For it to be like, I'm out of here. But
Hmm.
to go like you said, to have the courage to learn more and ask
Hmm.
questions and learn from other people, right?
Hmm.
That's just so important because our field isn't one where you're ever gonna be like done, like a
Right.
utmost expert at everything, right?
Hmm.
And I think that can be frustrating for some of us. I know for sure it was for me many days.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I theoretically I should know what I'm doing. I mean, I had the afternoon yesterday where I had the glasses off in front of my seventh period sophomores, and I said, "We got stuff we got to do. Um, how are we going to do it together?" So even being where I'm sitting right now, year 13, the honor that I get to hold, I still have days where I do not have it figured out. And
Mhm.
that's the nature of the profession. It can be energizing and it can be so exhausting at the same time.
That's so true. And you mentioned earlier that our kiddos' lives are consistently shifting and our world,
Hmm.
right? Our society is consistently shifting. And I think there are, fields and there are jobs where
Hmm.
you aren't necessarily impacted by the day to day of the news cycle or, politics and things like that, but we are in
Oh
classrooms, right?
gosh.
We're
Yeah.
almost, especially because they come to us so early in the morning, right, that they
Hmm.
haven't gotten a chance to like decompress with their
Process.
family, process with their family. So they're like,
Hmm.
hey miss, I saw on the news that there was like a school shooting, or I saw on the news that this policy is changing, and you're like,
Hmm.
okay, we're gonna have to talk
That's where we're
about
going to go
this.
today.
Yes.
Hmm.
That's so hard.
It is, and I think that might be part of what's really frustrating. I think, especially for our Latinx educators, is that we can kind of see those forces, and those forces act on us in more ways than one.
Mm,
It's if there's um, a policy that comes out that's impacting our families or our removed family members, we're dealing sort of with our own feelings about that as we're trying to process with our students. And some of the students in our classrooms um, have very deep feelings and understandings of it. And some of the students in our classroom might be like, "What's going on? This is the first I've heard of this," or might say, "Yeah, and I think that's a great idea." There's that extra layer of tension, I think, that we
mm,
have to deal with that is exhausting. And sometimes
mm.
we can hide it, right? We don't always, our colleagues might not always think, "Wait a minute, this isn't just Melly I'm talking to. This is Andrade Melly. There might be something else there."
Mm. I,
Hmm.
I think you're speaking to, and I agree with you. I think, particularly when we serve the communities from which we came from, right?
Hmm.
Because you are like, our personal does overlap with that, like that business almost, because,
Hmm.
what you're impacted by may very much overlap with what our kiddos are impacted by, right?
Right.
And I think what comes up for me in that sense is how often we try to, and do in some cases, remove humanity from teachers,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
expect there to be robots at the front of
Yes.
classrooms, where it's like, you can't feel this, you can't talk about
Mhm.
this, you can't express this, you can't
Mhm.
cry, right? You can't laugh
Right.
too loud, you can't, right? And so
Mhm.
I think you
Yeah.
get to a point where you have to like push against that a little bit in
Oh,
order to
yeah.
like honor yourself too,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Well, it's a human profession. I mean, it's the most human profession there is, and um, I understand it's a challenge that you want to create a safe space for every student in your classroom, and we
Right.
want to make sure we do that. But safe doesn't mean sterile. Safe
Mm,
doesn't mean robotic. I think the safest spaces that our students have are the ones where they understand that we're going to be able to express ourselves. We're going to be able to listen to different points of view. We're going to disagree. We're going to have different perspectives on different issues, and that's part of it. That when you see
mm,
that as a strength, the vulnerability and the possible disagreement and the humanness, those are really the moments that our students remember, and I think those are the moments that keep our teachers in the field.
mm. I love that. I think you're absolutely right that the our kiddos learn from those moments, right? If I'm able to say like, hey, I'm being informed, me as a person, as Susana, is being informed by XYZ.
Hmm.
What do you all think? Right. And then if I have a student who's like, that wasn't my perspective because I'm
Hmm.
being informed by X, right? Like, okay, they're going to need to learn to do that in their day to day life. Right.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Right. And I think the adults are very bad at that right now, which has like gotten us to the political place that we are, like being able to tease out, why do I think this? What is the influence on this? What other possibilities are there for this question? I tell my students all the time, we are practicing at it, so you're better at this than we are, because we're very bad at
mm,
it right now.
mm, I love that. I mean, I think inherently that should be our goal, right? Is for I was talking to my husband earlier about our nieces and nephews, and we have lots of them, and so it's like, what mistakes or lessons have we learned that we can then say, hey, you know, I can help you maneuver this thing called life,
Right.
and like and hope that my knowledge and my experience supports you, right? Again, I think it's another way we take that humanity away from teachers, because it's like, you can't share about your family and you shouldn't
Mhm.
share about, right? Like there's like supposed to be this boundary, which I
Division.
understand, like some of it. And at the same time, it's also like, hey, I am a person too, right? So
Yeah, and I think there's ways there's ways to be human and to be vulnerable without oversharing.
agree.
And that ends up being a challenging line, I think, especially in the first few years of the profession to find. Um, but but having those moments of connection in the classroom of just, hey, you look really tired. Yeah, the toddler has allergies, and we're learning about that. That gets you that immediate, yep, we can relate. All the students in the classroom say, okay, yep, we've got you. And that's just a little moment of connection that continues us on the day.
Mhm. And
Mhm.
it's fine, and
Mhm.
things didn't blow up, and things are fine afterwards.
Exactly.
Well, we've just got going, and we've gotten started, which I love. I love. I mean, it's why I love these interviews, because just giving people space, and then we go back and forth. It's like we can agree, disagree,
Mhm.
but to kind of reel us back a little bit so that we know a little bit more about you. Tell us your leadership story, your
Mhm.
upbringing, your journey as a student, as a professional, anything you kind of credit for where you are now.
Mhm.
Tell us about that.
Oh man, well, I mean, my upbringing is definitely what has brought me to this place. I always wanted to be a teacher. I was the kid who was lining up my brothers in the backyard and saying, "Okay, well, this is going to be school. This is what we're doing today." Um, and my dad's the oldest of nine, and so we have 30 cousins. And I'm the second oldest. My cousin Susie beat me by 2 weeks. But so anytime that the cousins are together, like, yes, I'm going to work with the little kids. I will pull you in your wagon wherever you want to go. That's always been part of the cards. And growing up in my district, I didn't realize this while I was going there, but I found it out as an adult. Even back when I was attending as a student, our district is one of the most diverse in the state. It
Mm,
is a district that doesn't have a clear racial majority. It's very mixed socioeconomically. So I had friends from all backgrounds, friends of all different means, all different interests. And that really grew me as a young person. I went out into the world and I was shocked. I said, "What do you mean you don't have a friend from this background? What do you
mm,
mean you've never had that kind of interaction that all you know is from TV?" That was completely alien to me. Um, but at the same time, my teachers, while they showed me amazing love and they taught me so well, there were some parts of me that they didn't quite understand. Um, they didn't understand why bringing a B home on a test to my father, first generation, had become a naturalized citizen, why a B on a test might be unacceptable. They didn't understand why a call home was going to be a very big deal for me in ways that it might not have been for my classmates. Um, and so I really became a teacher to be who those teachers had been, but to be someone that I could see, right? The teacher that I needed when I was younger was really what I wanted to be, someone who could understand all of those different influences and sort of those different pressures that I was trying to navigate. As a student who is Latina, who is American in the Midwest, which is an interesting place to be, uh,
mm.
as well as somebody who had that desire to teach and to do well and to serve the community. So I think that's a lot of why I've come to where I am. Is that I want to be who I needed.
Mm. I think I hear that a lot from a lot of Latinx educators.
Hmm.
I hear that where it's like, I was first generation or I was an immigrant or my family were immigrant, right? And like I just didn't see that as I was growing up. And I mean the B on the test thing totally
Hmm.
resonates with me. And I think American society, or I don't know what that is, but it's not as like it's fine, it's a B, right? You passed the class or like you passed the test, right? But
Right.
that you described it as pressure, and I think that resonates with so many of us Latinos who whether we're immigrant or first generation,
Hmm.
or beyond, right? Those
Hmm.
kind of attitudes about schooling and about kind of upward mobility,
Hmm.
like are really ingrained in us, and
Hmm.
it is difficult to exist in a school system as a student
Hmm.
and feel like I like we there's so much that happens at home or that gets said at home that like
Hmm.
doesn't happen here, right?
Right.
So it's really interesting that you say that because a lot of teachers I talk to are like, that's why I
Hmm.
became a teacher, is because I didn't see this happening.
Hmm.
Um, how do you feel about that now that you've been teaching for a little while? Has that come up in your teaching? Does it come up with your students? How do you feel about that?
It does. It has in the 13 years that I've been teaching. Our the population in our area, our Latinx population has really skyrocketed. I mean, we're up to something like 24% of our students. And so when they come into my class, the first day of school, every teacher in the building gives sort of a presentation on who they are, on their background, on why they went into teaching. And I share this with my students. And in every class, there's almost this ripple that goes through the classroom all the way the front to the back when I share about my dad and why I went into teaching, and share pictures, um, just of this feeling of being seen. And I kind of share that I've gone into this so that there are teachers who I can relate to, or I can relate to students in ways that folks maybe weren't quite able to relate to me. And there's a lot of nodding and like, yeah, that this is an opportunity for them to relate to a teacher. And when we're welcoming families into the schools, having someone who speaks your language to welcome you in, bienvenidos, estamos felices, están aquí, like just that sort of sends this message that you belong here. Like you are invited here, you are welcome here. There is leadership here for you. Your concerns are represented here. I think that just sends such a powerful message to our students and to our families. And I've seen that, the students who are happy to see me, and also the students who are like, okay, I'm not going to act up in your class because I know you can get my mom on the phone. Um, and that game is done for me now as of my sophomore year of high school.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think um I think more than anything, the sense of maybe not more than anything, but you've probably felt like that sense of relief from parents
Mhm.
when they're like finally, and then like the finally is usually just like I get access to information, which
Yeah.
is like bare
Basic.
minimum to right.
Hmm.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
should be the basic of what schools are providing for our
Hmm.
families and the students, right? But for just I don't I know there's a lot of work happening for language access in particular, right? And all of that, but Latinos and multilingual people
Hmm.
are not new to our country, and so it's kind of a conundrum to me, like,
Hmm.
wh- why are we not there yet, right? But
Yes.
but that is again why our organization exists, because we know that multilingualism is not the norm in schools, right? At least when it comes to like teachers and staff.
Hmm.
And so if that affirms for our students and families that you do belong here, right? You do deserve leadership opportunities, like you said, right? You do deserve that high school diploma and more, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think that I know that that's life changing for a lot
Hmm.
of students. And I know like it may have been for you. I know for sure it was for me when you had a
Hmm.
teacher, maybe not even the same ethnicity or race, but just that thing that you were like, "Oh, okay." Like
Hmm.
we click on that. Did you have a
Yes.
teacher like that who like
Mhm.
just clicked on just another level that you were like, "Oh, okay, I can do this," you know?
You understand it. I did. I did. I had many teachers um, who were wonderful for me and who really supported me and looked out for me. One teacher who's coming to mind right now is actually a college professor I had,
Mm,
who is a Latina, and again, I don't think it was something that I realized until later, but like the specific ways that she invited me in and took the time to connect with me, took the time to build that relationship, in the classroom, collaborating over papers, looking at um, what comes for me afterwards, what's the long-term goal. She really was somebody who worked as a sponsor almost, the concept, the idea of a literacy sponsor, someone who will help you speak the language, the social language that you might not have that full idea of. She was definitely that person for me.
you just brought a couple things to mind. First of all, Latino educators are rare in K through 12, but in higher ed, it's like way, way lower,
Hmm.
and it's hard to get much lower than K-12, right? But so shout out to higher ed folks, because you are making a difference as well, and we wouldn't. Christina and I are testaments to that. I don't know where we'd be without you, right?
Hmm.
Um, but also, um, the concept of cultural is it like translanguaging, right? Or cultural
Hmm.
translating,
Hmm.
um, where like you and I are fluent English speakers and
Hmm.
readers and writers, like we're fluent in that way,
Hmm.
but perhaps college, right? Or grad school, like things that are like just higher level in society. I
Hmm.
don't know if higher level is the right word, but you know what I mean, like just a
Yeah.
little more complicated and
Hmm.
complex. Having people who can translate that for you
Hmm.
is pinnacle for a lot of
Hmm.
us, and that's kind of what you're describing.
Hmm.
And for some of our kiddos, that ends up being us, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's absolutely right that it's sometimes not especially with some of our first generation, even second generation students, it ends up not being an issue of language access. It ends up being an issue of cultural access.
Mm,
When we think about the immense knowledge that you need to have to apply for college, even in the first place, even with the internet, there is this huge list of information that, unless you have somebody who already knows it, you cannot unlock. Anybody can look up, okay, well, I apply, I can find this application and I write an essay and I pay my money and I take the ACT. I can do that. But unless you have somebody along with you saying, here's how you improve your ACT score, here's the way that we're going to work on that essay, here are schools that are going to meet your financial aid need, and here's how we fill out the paperwork to do that, let alone taking the hours and hours to actually do that work. Or even saying, okay, you're into these schools, now let's look at them and decide what you value so you can actually make an informed choice. That's a tremendous amount of cultural capital that we can provide to our students, and that somebody provided to us, whether it was a parent, whether it was a teacher or a counselor. I mean, those are really huge ways that we get to be gate openers for people.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just going back to a conversation I was having with my husband. We were again talking about our nieces and nephews, and they're
Mhm,
growing up, and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up with all the things, right? Um, but even the concept of, so one of our family members said, like, well, I'm deciding not to go to school because this
mhm,
profession I want to go into doesn't make very much money, right?
mhm,
And Carlos and I now, through our experience, have
mhm,
the knowledge of like, yes, and right, like,
mhm,
that's an entry level, right, certificate, and so like there's opportunities for growth, and
mhm,
like, and what does that look like in the long run, right? You're in
mhm,
your early 20s now, but what does, right, like, a an entry level non-certification job
mhm.
look like, right? I mean, just like the
Right, right.
intricacy of like how higher ed and how like certifications or trade
Mhm,
school or an associate's, right,
mhm.
really does impact. I feel like even I am like, I don't know, and yes I do, right?
Right.
But like to navigate that as someone who is either an immigrant student or
Mhm,
immigrant person, first generation, first
mhm,
even second generation, right? Where you say,
mhm.
like, if I'm first generation college goer, I could be
Mhm.
third generation American, but if I'm first
Right.
generation college goer,
Mhm,
there's a whole web of complexity
mhm,
that without having, maybe your Latina professor and me, I can think of
mhm,
teachers and things, um, can feel really daunting.
mhm.
Or I won't even say can feel daunting, is really
It is.
daunting, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
again, why our organization exists, so that folks like you feel supported, and we can
Mhm.
have more folks like us. Um, I love it. I love all of that. Any other thoughts about that?
Just that it's hard work, but it's such good work.
Mm.
It's a field that, and it's a part of the field, that's not part of the job description at all, like being teaching students how to navigate the next level of what they want to do. That's not part of what they write in the teaching job description. But I think that's the part that's most rewarding. I think that's the part that we go into this field for, to make a difference in students' lives.
Sorry, my dog's barking.
Dogs
This
and
is like
toddlers,
COVID.
my
Yes, this is like COVID days where it's like we were all working from home and people's dogs would be barking.
Mhm,
Um, yes, and I also want to kind of call out or name out that it led to my burnout too,
mhm,
right? The like asterisk things that we do that's like not in our job description, but
mhm,
you do in service of your community and for
mhm,
love and care of your community.
mhm,
um, I can testify for myself did lead to my burnout. So for teachers
mhm,
listening, know that, like, because teaching is work of the heart, right?
mhm,
We are called to like support in all these other ways, but know that then it becomes even more important to prioritize self-care and like taking a
mhm,
break and all of that. Like, does that resonate
mhm.
with you at all? Because I
Oh,
know I was like,
yes.
I'm translating like legal documents for families and
Yes.
supporting with like food stamp forms, and like
Mhm.
I also have to teach, right? So what are
Right.
your thoughts on that?
We become the people who know all of the things, even
Mhm.
even when that's not part of the description, really. And I think that that's probably another pressure that we feel. That again, there's sort of that, the idea of familia, right? That we're part of a group, and there's a sense that we want to serve the group and help and extend ourselves to do that. Um, speaking for myself, especially as a woman, as a Latino woman, I have inherited the superpower. My Aunt Arcelia really has it, that just in a crisis, absolutely cool, business-like. I mean, I would trust her to set a broken bone. I would trust
Mm,
her to um, like jump into a burning building, because she would do it calmly and professionally, and then it would be done, because that's what we do. We manage,
mm,
we complete it, we take care of the family. And in education, the family becomes so big that one person cannot save everyone.
mm,
And it's not that our students need saving, they need access, they need support. But the thing that is so important, the two things I think that are so important, are drawing those boundaries and saying, this is what I can give, but then this is where I have to stop, to take care of myself and to take care of my tighter circle of family, as well as reaching out to larger circles for support. Um,
mm,
I spoke a little bit about the union, that's an area of support for me, that they have grown me professionally, that they've recharged me when my batteries are spent. My colleagues down the hallway, my neighbors and my family, and also affinity groups. I mean, like the LEC is doing in Kansas City, we don't have any specifically Latinx support systems in St. Louis, but we have a teachers of color group in my district. And that even is a place where people can say, okay, we are seen, we are here together. How can we support each other?
mm. That's so important. Going back to like that mentor, that support, um, because teacher burnout is real. So everyone listening, please make sure you're taking care of yourself and you're seeking support. My next question is like, I think we've touched on it a little bit here and there, but more specifically, what have been some hurdles in your career that others may be facing that you maybe made it to the other side of, that can encourage someone maybe going through it now?
I made it to the other side, and then it jumped up and left on top of me again, is
Yeah,
usually the way that it goes.
exactly.
Um, I think early in my career, I was putting a lot of my time and energy into the classroom, into classroom management. I mean, which is the struggle, right? Especially those first handful of years, until I learned some of the structures, some of the patterns, some of the ways to relate with students that work for me. Um, I think some of the things that were most helpful to me there, I buy a copy of Teaching with Love and Logic for every pre-service teacher, every mentee that I work with, just because it talks so much about the power of connecting with students and giving students agency and voice and power in the classroom. Because we have to be honest, if we don't give them power, they will take it.
Mm,
That's people.
mm,
Um, And so I think beginning to build a classroom in that way, earlier in my career, really helped me. I think as I've gone further on in my career, the other book recommendation that I'll drop is Zaretta Hammond, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, that really talks about how to build a classroom, how to build content that connects students, and kind of uses community to help them get to a deeper place in their education. So
mm,
I think early career, those were my big challenges. But then as I've gone on, I think mid and where I am right now, I guess is still mid career. I think what's challenging is getting outside of my own classroom space and recognizing all these forces that work on education.
mhm,
Um, there's this great book, third book recommendation, sorry, called The Teacher Wars, that talks about the education profession and all the problems that we've been facing, and how we've been facing them basically in cycles since education started in
wow.
this country. Um, so I think it's frustrating to see those forces, but the more that we see them, the more that we can understand them and either say, well, that's not my problem. They're going to think what they think, and I just have to take care of my kids in front of me. But for some of them to say, this is the misunderstanding. Here's how I can work against that. Here's how I can correct that, so that the community can really come together instead of fighting against itself.
I love that. With Love and Logic,
Mhm.
your second one was culturally responsive teaching
And the
and
brain.
the brain.
Hmm.
And then I got that third one.
Third
I
one,
like to
the teacher wars,
the teacher
which is such a
wars.
good title.
I know. I have actually haven't even heard of that one. sorry, I missed the end and everyone. I like to put book suggestions and video and movie suggestions in the comments because,
Mhm.
um, in those days where you're getting ready to give up, right, or
Mhm.
you're struggling, just that nudge that sometimes that some of that reading does for you, or that movie, or whatever it is
Mhm.
that, right. I'll have to read the Teacher Wars because I I'm with you. I get like
Mhm.
frustrated with the state of education, and I guess I didn't realize that these things do happen in cycles, right? And
Mhm.
we come out of it with very little changed.
The hope
um,
is that we'll keep spiraling forward a little bit, that we're at least
yeah.
past like the Red Scare, like 1950s communism, but I don't know, it's a comfort knowing that we've been here before and we've survived it. So it becomes what are the steps forward? What's the learning we can take this time?
Mm.
When I'm able to be really optimistic about it, that's what I think. There are times that I'm not able to be that optimistic about it, but I try.
You're like, let's be clear. There are times. Yeah, I mean, I think for people like you and I inherently, who want to see things be better for our children, there are always going to be, those frustrations because we're under a very deeply rooted institution, right? And it's antiquated and it's existed for so long,
Mhm.
and some of it inherently hurts, people of color and low income folks, right? And so like that that you know I won't hop on my soapbox right now because then I won't get off for a long time.
We would have
um,
a very long live stream. It would be the dinner live stream.
yes, yeah, exactly. So you've also kind of done a little bit of this as we've chatted, but is there any advice that you would give to any Latinx educator who's struggling right now?
I think the first advice is to find your people.
Mm.
Um, find that person in your hallway, not the one who just wants to complain. Find the one who helps build you up. Find the people who teach the same thing as you. Find your professional group. Find your union group. Um, just those are going to be. You don't have to do anything beyond that. If you find those people, then the rest is going to come. And I think the second piece of it would be once you've gotten close to those people, the problems that you're facing, get curious about them. I think the more
Mm.
that you can turn sort of judgments into questions, the more successful you'll be. With that crazy group of freshmen all the way back, my question had to be, what's driving this behavior? What
Mm.
am I doing that can move this? What have I tried? What other things can I try? What does someone else see? And I think that the questions help you find the next step. You might not find all of the steps, but I think that's going to get you at least one place that you can start. And then the next thing will appear, and then the next thing.
Mm. I think that's so powerful, leaning into curiosity.
Hmm.
Um, because, like we said, things change.
Hmm.
I mean, in your 13 years of teaching, lots
Yeah.
has changed.
I still remember teaching off of the big laptop carts or like having to truck on down to
Yeah,
the computer lab, for one day a week. And
yeah,
now it's completely different.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, a global pandemic kind of happened, right? And so, definitely, just that thing.
Yeah, the
Um,
world ended and we kept going.
yeah. So to remain curious in, how things can be better, but also what you don't know yet, and how, you pursuing improvement within yourself and development
Mhm.
within yourself can be better for your kiddo, for your students, right, and for their families. I love that. I love that. What keeps you going?
This was the question that I thought the most about. I think
Mm.
I think the people keep me going. The the students who come back or reach out, the colleagues who come in and say, I just had the best day with my fifth hour. You'll never believe what I tried. Um, the graduates who reach out randomly. I got an email from a graduate maybe 3 or 4 months ago, a student who was only in my class for a couple of weeks. And he said, Hey, I don't know if you remember me, that this is what I'm up to now, and sent me
Mm,
pictures of um, he works on cars now, and so like sent me pictures of his shop, sent me pictures of the projects, sent me pictures of him like with his coworkers. Um, Knowing that just being with that student for 2 weeks, that there can be that kind of a difference that I can make.
wow.
I think on the hard days that helps me say, okay, like all the other things that are going on, I'm going to stick around for this.
Mm. Yeah, that's super, super powerful. It's a typical answer, right? A lot of
Mhm.
people answer to this question, the students and the people.
Mhm.
But like we said earlier, that in some instances, the trajectory of our kiddos' lives is really being impacted by their experience in schools, and sometimes just with their experience with one teacher, right? Either
Mhm.
negatively or
Mhm.
positively. And so to have some evidence that you are like positively impacting people's life trajectories, I mean, that has to feel really good. I mean, I know how
Uh,
that feels, right? And it feels really good.
exactly. It does.
um I love that. I love that. Well, to wrap up our conversation, I'm super bummed that we're nearing the end of our conversation, but um, I really love this question, and you get such a variety of answers to it. But if you had one thing that you wanted all of your students to walk away from your class knowing, what would that be?
That they deserve a seat at every table.
Mm, mm,
Every conversation where there are decisions being made about them, their communities, their family, this country, they deserve a seat, they deserve a voice. And if there is not a chair ready for them, they got to go find one. And the people already at that table, the adults, the decision makers who are there, we've got to make room. Um, we have to bring people into those conversations. The more people that we have in them, and the more of those rich perspectives, I think the better all of those decisions in all of our communities and all of us are going to be.
mm-hmm. I'm really glad you said that. My husband and I went to the Missouri Capitol, state capitol, this past month for the first time ever.
Hmm.
And here I am, 30 years old, barely finding out that this is a right that we actually have all the time, right? Is to go to the Capitol and to meet with our representatives, and sometimes to pull them out of session and say, hey, I'm really having this issue that's impacting my child's life or my student,
Hmm.
right? Like, I had no idea that that was something that you can do. And it's like, I mean, yeah, it's our tax money, right? Like, that makes sense. But, I think we as a system fail to share. I mean, like, I've gone to school K through 12 here in Missouri,
Hmm.
um, and yet, like, that's not something that I knew. And
Hmm.
so for our students to know, I love that, to know, you can be an active participant in the decisions that are being made about you, right? And about your family.
Yeah.
um, I don't think we do a very good job of that, I'm going to be honest, as a system,
Hmm.
for students and families to know that, right? So I love
I
that.
Yeah, I think that the generation that's coming up now does a better job of it. I think social media, I think sort of that rise of youth activism that we've seen. I think through Black Lives Matter, I think there's a lot of the student protests against gun violence. The kids get it. They
Hmm.
get it. We just gotta give them the mic.
Hmm. And
Hmm.
like you said, give space, leave room, push our
Hmm.
chairs over a little bit and say, like, yep, come on. I love that. I love that. Well, Christina, any final thoughts or insight you'd like to share with our community before we wrap up?
Just sending appreciation and love to all the teachers who are here in fourth quarter. Hang in. You are going to make it. You deserve rest and beautiful things. And don't wait until summer break to take those things for yourself. Go do some of it tonight. The papers are going to be there.
Love it. Exactly. All of that. Well, Christina, thank you so much for being with us today. Everyone who is watching, thank you for being with us as well. And we will see you next week. Hi, Christina. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.